research point in sort of the what our friend, as crazy as he is correct when Sandbach says that the right online has no pedagogical frame of reference on how to research or how to learn.
Oh yeah, like Sandy is correct on so many things. Like he's also indeed insane and then a vagrant and a one-man creature that exists solely in himself, but he is correct on many issues, and many people do not want to hear him.
And no, I agree with that. And so because we have no pedagogical frame of reference outside of how to compete inside the right-wing Twitter Skinner box, we fundamentally lack a pretty coherent approach to how to research. And I don't mean just like learning things, because I think there are a lot of great autodidacts or learned university men who have taught me many great things on Twitter. But I mean, for instance, like the Community Relations Service has decades of literature, and like their 5-year action plans are available online. And it's just like you could make an entire program of content, so to speak, just going into this stuff, and no one wants to do it.
I am doing this for one organization that's very important in Belgium right now, just reading their yearly reports, going through several, like on the Internet Archive, through several of their older websites, trying to find certain references to other things, like read all the documentation and write some report about it, because it's like that specific organization in question has been how long? Since 1993, I think they were, by an act of the Belgian parliament, founded. And so they've been around for a very long time, and they've done a lot of things. Like they're a key part in civil society, because one of these things that's organizations like, this is UNIA, was then called the Center for Equal Rights and Anti-Discrimination. What it does, it makes so many reports, so many like theoretical frameworks, which then get applied to a whole sorts of other groups. And this is one of the things that is also often not well enough understood, is that they have their own networks of experts, and they create a whole, you could say, library or places where then other organizations can then come to. It's like, I want to give me some documents so I can start my own diversity course here. Or they can say like, this organization over there, they have everything you need. And so they have everything necessary to do all these things. Like that organization I mentioned, Savaria, they have another subsidiary group. It's called Click. And what they do is they develop educational material that is LGBTIQ friendly. Like they develop that. They also are in the when the Flemish government wants to like create a new educational plan or educational material, they have their stake in that, and they can look through it through a diversity perspective to make sure that diversity is being rightly applied. They give workshops to police force, workshops in businesses, all these kinds of things to make sure that there is a diversity perspective, that these organizations become more diverse. Like it's the same thing that I knew existed before, but there is I'm now here on it. There is the European Institute for Gender Equality. And what does it do? It's basically its own names itself. It's in European Commission. It's not in direct part of the European Commission, but it's funded by the European Union and has an official status. And it's a place where all the information about gender equality in the whole European Union comes together. Reports are written about as they inform the 5-yearly action plans. They write reports on those nations to see how well they've been developing within their gender equality. If new problems come up, they talk about it. They have a whole page about gender mainstreaming, which is basically making everything more equal, gender equal. And then they have lots of how would you call it, like tools for organizations, states, whatever, to help them to develop their own gender mainstreaming perspective in everything they do, their own gender perspective in everything they do. And everything about the organization is very public. It's all, you can very clearly see it all. And but they have all these tools available. Like if I wanted to be, what is it, start a business and wanted to make sure that all the gender or diversity checkboxes are ticked, I can go to these places, ask for documentation, ask for tools, and I can do this. We do not have anything like this on the rights. Like there is no, like if somebody comes to you and asks you from how can I help research such organizations, then yeah, we don't have anything like this.
No, we don't. And the closest thing that, in at least in my memory, that sounds anything like that is what, made, for better or for worse, what made James O'Keefe famous was just simply, even if the gay act or whatever made that kind of funny. I mean, what he was doing since the whole Acorn stuff, since the Obama years, so effective was that fundamentally, I am going to research the aspects and the auspices of left-wing NGOs or members of government and interrogate and investigate. And that was huge. And I mean, a lot of people don't realize that because they never follow through with it. They saw the videos and then they just never said anything else about it, despite the fact that, people did get fired or they got moved to a different job or location, which is, par for the course. But it did show that there were organizations or people that were willing to go out and do things. Now, obviously, that's a dangerous sort of one-man show. I mean, he had a team, but we don't have any equivalent because no one thinks like that or no one wants to do that kind of reporting because we know that there's, at least in America, there's a very real danger to one's livelihood. I mean, you don't have to like Andy Ngo for his lifestyle choices, but he is one of the few people that's willing to report on these dangerous left-wing terrorists, and the fact that they control entire cities, it's a damning indictment of anything right-wing or conservative.
And again, others also pointed this out. Even if the mayor of, was it Portland, can have, like, doesn't do anything about an Antifa, like, book selling thing that happens, like, where is the power of the state? Where is the results of Trump declaring Antifa terrorist, domestic terrorist or a foreign terrorist organization?
I don't think he's formally declared it either. He made a statement about it, which that's nice, but I need the action. I need the follow through, which I'm not getting. And I understand that there's a million things going on in the that he has to fight, but I don't want this to be another Trump one where I'm given a lot of lovely lip service, but I'm not given action. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he's done a lot in this first 9 months or 10 months that I've been happy with, but I also recognize that between like the Trump administration, between the first Trump and the second Trump administration, there has been so much work to identify and list names and all we can follow the money. People have been following the money for years. There's lovely flow charts made by anons and public officials about these issues. And so it's like, okay, well, let's go make something happen.
Yeah, indeed. But it's like always that fear to then fire them, or that fear then to do real action that can have like unpleasant consequences just does not happen. And
correct.
And I think most people have that that frustration and then this is of course, like, I'm not an American, so I stand a little bit outside that, but then I get a little frustrated even sometimes that there is even that what is it, trust the plan, never black pill, always chimp. Okay, sure, but criticism, is this allowed? Can we not just say something when we don't like this, or maybe some other things have to happen? And there also seems to be that atmosphere of you cannot question that the administration, or you become part of the black pill group and you are just no longer relevant. You understand? And
Yeah, no, I've expressed that frustration privately in numerous places. And like, don't get me wrong, like, I want this administration to succeed. I would
yes,
love for it to do all the things that it sets out to do, because even if it got 50% of what it wants to do done, that would make this country a much more livable place. And that would be wonderful. However, I also know that I'm allowed to criticize, but I think that a lot of it has to do with sort of an online, political network of people who are, and I mean, that's the nature of the whole Twitter posting thing, is that people are really just happy to hammer on and
mm-hmm.
just make their money, or even just have their clout, because this is where you do it.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like, okay, well, that's cool and all, but that's not, what are we doing here? Like, there's no success in that kind of
yeah,
understanding.
and I don't know if I've talked with you about this before, but what I've also noticed and I found really sad, that lots of the accounts who used to, like, what is it, 2 3 years ago, make translations or publish a good article every once in a while, they just stopped with that and are do nothing but engagement farming, rage baiting, nothing productive. Like, I'm not going to name names, but there are many such people, and it feels like a real regression in that regard. Like, even not even doing these kinds of things anymore because not enough readers or whatever. But that's then maybe a way of an indictment of the whole scene itself, that there is no willingness for these kinds of more intellectual.
It certainly feels that way most of the time.
Yeah, like I try to at least every so often publish an article that I hope gives something. It's also for my own clarification of my own thoughts, but it's here some content. Maybe you like this, maybe you get something out of it, and not the following the daily news cycle or the yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I think in some situations the daily news cycle is, yeah, you can't completely ignore it, or at least I try
Mm-hmm.
not to completely ignore it, because yeah, it is important for us to discuss and to cover, because you're absolutely right. Like, it's hard to not turn into, like, I don't know, like the Columbia Bugle or something, where it's like just the news all the time, and it's
Mm-hmm.
an aggregation of things that make you feel good. And like, don't get me wrong, like, I would love to own the libs. It's entertaining to watch them, get uncomfortable or to squirm
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But I also know that that is not
Mm-hmm.
that's not the end all be all for me. There has to be more, and if there's not more, then like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, yeah,
So I,
and that.
I am glad, at least with the network I have, that there has
Mm-hmm.
been a much more emphatic focus on, um, like you said, the research or where the money goes, because
Yeah,
none of this will matter unless you have names and receipts and addresses.
yeah. Mm-hmm. And also just know how these things work, or what is even pushed. And this is also a thing, and others have again also pointed out before me, and I emphatically say yes to this, is that the whole, like, I was also there in 2015, 2016, all the fun of the SJW compilations and all these kind of things, and laughing at cultural appropriation and structural racism and all these things. Yes, very funny and the like. But all that warps the understanding of many on the right of these issues, of like these frames, these concepts, because the libs have written a fuck ton about this, and a lot of it is even reasonably like intelligent. If you step in their own frame, these things make quite a bit of sense. But if you just dismiss them out of hands, like take for example something like, I know, structural racism. You hear this about, do most on the right even know what the more intelligent libs mean by this? What that concept entails, how it's used beyond the memes? I fear to say that most do not, because they don't read these kinds of things or engage with it beyond the shitting on like easy lip shits. I think Stanley also made that point, and it's a few months ago, when that Yarvin debate with that black woman from, was it Harvard?
I think it was Harvard or Yale, one of the two.
And he said like, so they're sending like these idiots and not one of their top people, so they just don't take him serious. And that's, I think, correct in the sense that the libs you often see in your face, they are not the ones who write the more intelligent like pamphlets or the more intelligent not pamphlet, books, reports. They are only the people who get the regurgitated like meme, easy to like
the
pop
meme
version of it. Yeah, while the more intelligent versions exist, and these also have to be encountered. Like this is why so many libs laughed at like Jordan Peterson when he was complaining about the cultural Marxists. And it's, if you know anything about that whole period, about 68 and these kind of things, the communists were kicked out. Like the communists despised 86 revolution. I'm talking like the intellectuals like an Adorno or the like, they despised those people. And after 68, there were only the liberals in control. Like there are no real communists nowhere. They're just liberals. Like Hassan is not a communist, he's a liberal.
Yeah.
Pausch is not a communist, he's a liberal. They're all liberals. And to then frame them all as communists and to not understand that they're basically liberals, again, calls up that whole reactive Cold War posting that then inflames the conservatives, but then they're just shooting the wrong, I don't know what's the good
you're
English
shooting
expression.
A corpse. You're not
yeah,
doing
shooting
anything.
A corpse and not engaging with what's really in front of them.
I mean, like Dave's point about ghost dancing, I think feels very relevant here, because it's just, what are we doing? Well, like you're parading around a dead enemy, and that enemy, I mean, don't get me wrong, like that enemy is an enemy that should stay dead, but also, what are we doing here in regards to what, like that thing is dead. Like that article that you had sent me a while ago about like communism, it's just, we're fighting libs. Like what are we doing, you know?
Like Marx is esoteric knowledge to these people. Like Marx is not even that relevant to these people. Like they don't care about, like when push comes to shove, it's identity, it's intersectionality, it's LGBTIQ. That's what they care about. Like that's the
nothing
essence
more,
of,
nothing less.
Yeah. And it's just that, and it's not communism. And again, this is like my contention with people like Mystery Grove, that he has the meme of they're just dysgenic freaks who blah 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 blah. And it's like, no, this is not capture everything.
Why are we underestimating our enemies?
Yeah, and that's really underestimating our enemies. That's like how nice to say to just it's how nice to say, but
I'm sure that
you are
feels good, but it's not true.
yeah, it feels good, it's not true, and it shows that the right is losing one of its main strengths, or many people on the right are losing one of the main strengths that the right had, that we could see into their minds and they could not see into ours.
And now I feel like that's becoming the opposite in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
yeah, it is. And memes, cheap memes like that, they cloud our vision. And that's I think the most dangerous thing, when we no longer are able to see truth for what it is, like no longer able to see what lays before us. And again, this is why that triumphalism feels way too premature. It feels too, it's not sober enough. Like you can say we can do lots of things, we can win, but that's different from saying trust the plan, everything is in control, hail Trump, victory is ours. And it's no, we are not yet there, not by a long shot.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So much work remains to be done. And I do think that I think a lot of it has to do with perhaps there was this evolutionary pressure that came under the censorship years that made us, I think, more efficient operators, because we knew
Mm-hmm.
that you could get banned, or that if you had uncovered something that fundamentally pointed out a structural vulnerability of your enemy, that you were going to have a better chance at calling it out,
Mm-hmm.
and that could get you banned. Like, I think that, like, Toad Spotted or Gate Analyst were really
Mm-hmm.
good at pointing this stuff out, not just being like good posters, but they were effective at illustrating key structural or financial
Mm-hmm.
vulnerabilities. And now they're gone, which I think is depressing. But
Yeah.
now it's like, oh well, I own this space, I can kind of do whatever I want, and that's nice, but I think that it requires us to put a little more work in than what we currently have in front of us. And I don't know how many people realize that, no, like the left is okay with what they're doing, or they're
Yeah.
happy with the position they're in.
Yeah. And again, the money still is flowing to them. Like closing down US, the aid helped certain people across the world, but it's only one program of billions upon billions upon billions who are still flowing into their fists. Like it's nowhere near ended. And that's the, like, there were some threads about, yeah, after USD 8 now they'll start collapsing on themselves. And no, they have so much more money than we can just ever dream about. Like again, an example, that organization I'm investigating, Unia, since 2013, they get about 9 million euros a year from the different Belgian governments. So that's more than about 100 million euros in the last, what is it now, 12 years they've spent on anti-discrimination, anti-racism, LGBTIQ, pushing all these kind of things. 100 million. That's a lot of money. Like,
Yeah.
and that's only one of these organizations. It's an important one, but it's only one of them. If you would count everything together, everything, I think you could easily get in Belgium more than 100 million a year, probably much more than that. And that's just one country, and not a particularly large one. And then look at this, the US or Europe as a collective, like how much money is every year being pushed into this.
I couldn't even give you a number.
Yeah, like in the United States will probably something completely ridiculously insane. But
Oh, of
and
course.
again, but one of the flaws that, especially in the United States, is that there's too much of a focus on what the federal government does. Important, yes, but your states, your county, your municipality also fucks you over on this. Like they also grant millions, if not billions, a year on these different programs.
They do, and it just gets passed into law, or it gets mentioned with little to no understanding of why that stuff is important, or
Mm-hmm.
why oh, it's just in the budget, and no one. And again, this goes back to the failure of our legislative processes, that no one wants to even investigate. Why is all this money there? Why are we
Yeah. But
why are we funding this? I mean, this is what
and
made
it
the libertarians at least effective political operators with regards to how
mm-hmm.
much wasteful spending there was, but it was never anything that it never got to a point where, oh, okay, well, like, are we going to do anything about it? No, probably not. We're just going to point it out. And it was feckless, but it was good to have the numbers. And to an extent, that still happens, but not
Mm-hmm.
where it could be. And we could be better about these things. But nevertheless, it just goes to show that our ability to operate has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and also one of the important things that people also do not realize, for example, in the city of Ghent, I made a very short like thread about this a month or two ago. There's an NGO called Casa Rosa, which is basically an umbrella organization for the local, like the LGBTIQ smaller groups. Like it could be in like a gay football team, all these kinds of smaller groups in the province of East Flanders, but more specifically in the city of Ghent. And what Casa Rosa has, they have their own properties. And so, when one of these organizations wants to do an event or the like, they can go there for free. They have all these things available for free. If they want to organize, could be just something like mundane, like a gaming night or a board game night, or just have a small bar to meet some people or whatever, or could be more politically charged, like a lecture or some workshops about some leftist thing. They have that available. And do we have these things on the right? In some limited sense, sometimes, but by and large, no.
Yeah.
Like if there would be, for example, with the Old Glory Club, if the major cities would have such a thing, well, you want to organize something, you can just go there and you have basically for free, or maybe you pay small fee, and you can organize hosted events, lectures, all these kind of things there. But we don't have these things, and so this is also a massive leg up for that the left has, and it's like, yeah, it's a massive leg up they have and we do not. And this also hampers our at least um, IRL organization and the like. And then especially, of course, the problem with eternal boomers who just do not understand these things. And in a more understanding world, they would maybe open up such things for us to some degree, but they just don't. So we just suffer without it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing too, is that as much of there has been this renewed discussion on right wing patronage,
Mm-hmm.
it is an issue that they fundamentally just do not understand, which is there is nothing that exists to the degree that the left has, which is frustrating because in all actuality, funding like game night, or even we're going to host a community lecture at this location, would be very easy to accomplish if they were willing to realize, why do they do these things? Well, one,
Mm-hmm.
cultural normalization, and then two, because it works at fundamentally
Mm-hmm.
illustrating that, hey, we're quote unquote normal, or whatever, and that
Mm-hmm.
makes us worthy of acceptance or worthy of political attention, and that's a good thing. And the right doesn't get that at all, and why that stuff is so important to left-wing projects. Like, if you wanted to normalize chuds, which I'm all for, like make your average sensitive young man a thing. I mean, like, this is where that sort of while we hate it, I think in a lot of regards, the conservatism of, say, the Chamber of Commerce would be so effective, because now all of a sudden the Chamber of Commerce is putting forward a business networking thing, and it's like, oh, cool. Well, now the job market sucks, and what's a great way for me to get involved? And it's just like, oh, well, a chance to find businessmen or a place to find work.
Yeah.
And we don't even do that.
Yeah. And that creates a massive disadvantage for our side. Like, I've also said this before, and you said in a way similar things. I could be the uber like member of the local Green Party if I wanted to be, or like you were saying, with if I wanted money, I would be a leftist streamer. Like, there's very little status, money, and whatever to be had in the right, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in the more philosophical sense, but it does hamper operational like possibilities to a large degree.
Yeah.
Or just the and it makes it difficult. Yeah, and then but again, it's not just here to complain about how bad everything is. I think it's one of the more important things is just to try to investigate these kinds of organizations for yourself. Like, I've a few times give the call, like, such similar organizations exist in your own city. Just have a look at them. Look which of these exist in your town. What do they do? Who are involved in there? Like, not even to do something actively with it, but if you have the documentation ready, then the moment some change happens, you can walk to new people in charge or to other people and say, like, here, look, I have here a document of 15 pages with all the names, what they do, the money they get, all these kinds of things. Here, do it as what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the first things I did when I first started doing this stuff online was just talking about the political offices or avenues in which you could do things. And I think that it's really important to consider just how much there is out there for you to engage in, because in a lot of ways, like, it's very difficult sometimes for people to understand just how much good or work there is for you to do politically, and what offices that includes or what positions, because there are a lot of offices, there are a lot of areas that are not as explicitly political or controlled politically by your enemies that you could start putting influence in. I mean, but this also, as left-wingers like to say, this requires you to quote unquote do the work. And that's not an easy thing to ask, because there's not a lot of reward in this. I mean, I know Patrick interviewed Martin Sellner not too long ago, and Martin had said, like, the activism is a young man's game, but the actual work to get people involved and listen to their causes, whether it's an organization or the lecture series or whatever, that's where a lot of that effort begins to seriously take root. And I don't think a lot of people understand that that's really what is needed now more than ever. Because, like, a culture war can be fought. Sure, you can talk about, like, the war on Christmas or whatever. But if you want to facilitate those kinds of changes or fights, then you're going to need to do it in a way that gives you a think tank and whatnot. And if you have those things and you start small, then hey, now all of a sudden there's a sinecure for you, or there's a place for you to actually put your labors rather than just like screaming into the void of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely also part of it. And yeah, like the whole point in a way of everything we've been saying up till now is there is much work to do, but there are ways to engage with it. And I think this is also in a way more productive than the sometimes um how would you like fast and loose analysis threads that sometimes people make, because I think this is also one of the more um sad things of Twitter in what is the last year and a half, is that the urge to compile a more cohesive thread or a more cohesive article or whatever has declined to some degree. And so sometimes you see those um, threads with like a very vague idea. The left is like this, or we are exactly like in the Italian situation of like we're exactly in the years of Let's, and then quickly drawing lots of conclusions from that, throwing this in the void. It gets circulated, but it's never thought about like, is this actually true, or is this actually a good analysis? But it's the whole like willingness to go as fast as possible to get as many takes out without taking the time to consider.
Yeah. And no one wants to take the time to consider, because a lot of it I do think has to do with just how warped our perception of time has become
Yes.
online. And I mean, it is crazy because, you know, today's the 8th of November. It is still less than 2 months since Charlie Kirk was murdered in
Yep.
broad daylight by a bunch of like transgender Antifa networks who clearly had foreknowledge, and we have the tweets and the receipts to prove it. And it's like no arrests were made, no nothing. And instead, I'm left now to face the consequences that, you know, this moment that I think so many people were hoping to have, that like, oh, we're going to finally realize that this threat is so existential, and instead that never took place. And of
No,
course, you
nothing.
know, way to snatch, you know, a victorious moment from the jaws of defeat. But uh, I mean, again, like the work that does need to be done is actually, I think, quite manageable and quite easy to do. Um, so I hope that those who understand what time it is, that this will be a wake up call to them. But I know that that won't be many.
Yeah, and it's yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, we
I
have
just find
to.
it wild how fast, like, it's the same people. I wrote that essay kind of tongue in cheek, but I also thought it was important because when you ask people like, well, what's important now or what's considered historical, um, you know, like the historical photos thing, I think that that's an important question to ask, because like, how has your perception of history or time changed in an age where photograph functionally means nothing?
Yeah,
And,
yes, and
yeah.
related to this also, and this some other, it's also we have a lot of amateur historians on the right, but a problem that many is that they, and I think Sandy has also complained about like ad nauseum, is that they do not really have any grasp of history as such. It's all facts, it's all little pieces, but no, not an idea of what is it now history, which historical analysis are you using here, or which vision of history informs your work. And I think this is also a related problem to this whole time thing, that there is not whole like waiting for a second and considering how does this fits into a more conceptual or theoretical understanding of history or of time. And I think this also plays a large part in that whole thing, or related also then using historical events or current events for the culture war itself, and not understanding that they exist within its own frame of reference, within its own like time, and trying to extrapolate too much from it.
Yeah, I agree. We put a lot of I almost want to say like, hey, this feels, or it's this gives me real Boss Baby vibes, where we understand one thing of history, but we can't contextualize it in its place, and we make it something for our current world or our current environment without any real understanding that like that's really not how this world worked, or that's really not applicable to this situation.